All right. Good morning, LinkedIn, and we're also streaming live on YouTube. And welcome to another episode of the Take a Knee Show with Mike Wallace, and I'm Scott Tucker.
Morning.
And can you hear me?
Yep, I got
Oh,
you.
okay, gotcha. Yeah. So, the idea with the show with Take a Knee, what Mike and I have been doing here is uh, recreating a lot of the conversations we have with retiring military officers and senior NCOs as they're now addressing the fact that, hey, I got to get out, look for a new job, make some decisions about benefits and finances, and what do I want to do with my life? And we've always learned that the best way to get a picture, kind of see forward a little bit, what are some possibilities out there, is to have a conversation with those who have done it before you. So Mike and I have our own versions of
Mhm.
that story, and Mike gets in the technical stuff of doing interviews and resumes and network, how to do the networking event. So we talk a lot about that stuff, but we're grateful to have Trevor Benitone from Adams Keegan with us today, Air Force Academy grad, who we met a couple weeks ago at the Service Academy Global Entrepreneur Summit 2024, the SAGES, which Mike and I talked about last show. Who's with Adams Keegan, an HR firm that works with a lot of businesses dealing with all the benefits side of the house. So look forward to hearing about Adams Keegan today as well, Trevor, and anything you want to talk about then. But excited to hear your story and any insights you can glean from your experience. And yeah, we can kind of get into it, Mike.
Welcome, Trevor. Welcome.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys, Mike, Scott. Appreciate you having me on. And the last time we were together a few weeks ago, I really enjoyed dinner with you guys. And Adams Keegan getting to both kind of host, sponsor the West Point and the Service Academy Global events for entrepreneurs has been great. I've really gotten to expand my network. Which in the Air Force, your network is kind of small. We don't have a lot of entrepreneurs, but seeing all these West Point Naval Academy entrepreneurs has been really rewarding. I mean, so thanks for having me. And
Yeah, I was going to say it was really a good event, wasn't it, Trevor? I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'd never done one and or participated in an event like that, but man, I just thought it was a great event, right? Full of just a lot of interesting individuals with various different pursuits, right? Some of which that we got to meet. I'm sure there were a number that we just didn't have time to kind of connect with, but overall, I just thought it was a great event. And thank you to you guys, not only for dinner, but for headlining the event, right? I mean,
Yeah, it wouldn't have happened.
Just aren't possible, right? Unless they have sponsors like Adams Keegan stepping in to really help out in that. So that's something special. So thank you from us to you guys for that. So it was awesome.
Well, I believe if you're a Service Academy or even an officer, senior NCO, someone that's getting into the business world, and you skip down on that event, then you really missed out. And I know there's a bunch of them that West Point, Naval Academy, Air Force Academy, they're all throwing. I would jump on that bandwagon if I were someone out there, because it's just the networking's great and a lot of fun. Well, so Scott, how far back do I start? There I was type thing, or?
Yeah, I mean, however you like to. I'm sure you shared.
So yeah, Scott said I'm a 1995 Air Force Academy grad from Memphis, Tennessee, and I moved back to Memphis, Tennessee when I retired, and that's a little bit a part of my story, and what we can get into as we talk about transition from the military. I was fortunate and I went to graduate school at University of Alabama. The Air Force sent me to graduate school, so I'm a diehard Bama fan. But also, I got to experience a little bit of civilian school too, which is nice. You get a little best of both worlds. And then I did a career in Air Force Special Operations Command, so flying the MC-130 Combat Talon. Really fun, basically glorified bus driver for the SEALs and Rangers, Green Berets, drop them off and you go back to your hotel, right? So pretty good deal. A lot of fun. Honestly, I tell people this all the time. They say, thank you for your service. I say, wow, I would have paid to do that, right? I mean, it was that much fun. Never had a bad assignment because I always felt like it's the mindset. There were always guys who complained about every assignment and their spouse was bringing them down. But I just figured out how to make every assignment fun. I did have an occasional bad leader, but most of the leaders were amazing along the way. So for me, it was really good. My last few assignments were out of the cockpit. I worked in the Secretary of Defense's office in special ops focused job there. And then I worked on Capitol Hill. And then I worked last as the commandant of the Air Force Special Operations School. So training all of our, overseeing the folks that trained all our folks in kind of academic education side of special ops, whether it was a language.
What an exciting time. Sounds like an adventure for sure, right?
It was.
You know, it's funny how the mind, when you reflect back on it, right? You're just like, man, I would have, you know, I would have gladly done all of this for free. It was such an adventure and we loved it all, right?
Exactly.
I'm sure there were a couple of days in there where you're going, I'm not getting paid enough for this, right? So,
yeah, that's probably true.
The mind mostly remembers the good, and I love that. So, yeah.
So, that's actually brings me to my first question. You know, given you had an exciting career, like I didn't retire myself. I got out early because I didn't have leaders. I can't blame anybody else. I had my reasons for getting out. But for someone with an exciting career like yours, what was your catalyst?
So so that's great, and that really impacts my story, I guess. So for me, I did have a good career, and when I served as commandant, I had success, and I had made full colonel. So I was a lieutenant colonel, the first lieutenant colonel to hold that job in years. It had always been a 06 position, and I'd made lieutenant colonel a little bit early, and I made colonel on time. And so I was still on the track and still going up, and still had an opportunity to maybe lead at a higher level. But in my situation, about a decade prior, my wife had been diagnosed with cancer. And unfortunately, about 4 or 5 years prior to my retirement, maybe a little bit less, she passed away. And I was working in Washington, D.C. She was getting treated at Johns Hopkins. And, you know, the doctors had given her 4 months, and she made it 5 years. She was a bigger fighter than us. And fortunately, you know, I did get to spend that time with her because I had young children at the time too. So she worked hard, helped raising the kids while fighting cancer. And when she passed, I still had a few years left. And luckily my sister moved in with me and helped me raise the kids down in Destin, Florida, outside of Herbert Field. But I knew that the writing was on the wall that I've got 2 young kids that are now approaching being teenagers. And as much as I would like to serve the country as an 06, it was time to serve my family and focus on them, because, you know, when you're an 06, they're going to move you every year. You're going to go to some more college. You know, it's just, you have to be either all in or all out. And I was always all in on my career. My wife always helped me do that, but it was time to take one for the family. And that was tough because, you know, you always think whatever you're doing in the military is so important. And in my world, it was pretty important. I mean, I remember being in the Pentagon when we got bin Laden and the Secretary's office bringing us down to thank us. Not that we did anything, but we were helping programs and budget stuff that supported SOCOM. But everything was a big deal. And our whole life was fighting terrorism. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're thinking about, I'll go do something totally different, which is really, really scary. Yeah. Right. I mean, and you have this feeling of
just in and of itself, right? Just in and of itself, that, you know, legacy term transition experience, like you're pointing out, Trevor, that's an angsty time for many senior leaders. We're fairly institutionalized. We don't realize it, right?
Yep. I was like, and you know, you kind of feel like you're letting the service down. They've selected you for promotion, and you're going to have to walk. So what I did, Scott, is I just, you know, I definitely started early because I knew my situation was probably not tenable. And so I will tell everybody out there, if you think you're going to transition, because we all are, right? We spend, even if you're a retired Air Force Academy guy like me with 24 years in the service, I'm 51. So I've spent more time out of the service than in the service, but I kind of identify as an Air Force guy, right? Everybody's like, oh, you're the Air Force Academy guy. No. Well, our lives are going to be spent out of the service more than they're in the service, even though we're defined by our service. sometimes if you're a Marine, it could be like 20 minutes in the Marine Corps, right? And they're like a Marine for life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got two brothers that are in the Marines. I echo that.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Forever. Yeah.
So, I started early, and I think that was wise. And I'd tell everybody, if you're not starting early, you're not even doing it right. I had a coach say, to show up early is on time is late, and late is never been there.
Yeah.
So you got to start early. And in the service, that looks bad. Sometimes you look like you're a quitter. At least back then, there was more of a stigma of, oh, you're a quitter. You're going to go to the airlines. You're going to do this or that. But these days, the service seems to have more programs. Like there's more support. I've got a buddy, he's doing a 90-day Army program where some other company gets him for 90 days and the Army's paying for it. Yeah. And his employer is excited. It's a group here, United Van Lines, Armstrong, and they're taking this guy and they're going to get him for 90 days. And then he's going to start working for them. And so, wow, that's a great program. That type of thing was kind of like PTSD, not as quite adopted yet, 10 years ago when I separated, but now it is. So I'll tell you, start early, but you don't want to burn any bridges, right? So maybe the first year I say is more gathering, it's meeting, it's learning, it's socializing privately that you're coming to the end, whether it was a short career, long career. And but you don't want to burn any bridges because you still may want to serve. Everybody's got a reason for getting out. Mine was the clear trigger of my family situation. And then inside of 1 year, it's a full-time job, in my opinion. You need to work hard at it. You need to pick up speed, and then you're 6 to 9 months before your terminal leave, you need to be rocking and rolling. And for me, I was pretty fortunate. I knew my why. And so I would tell everybody, knowing your why is important. Why are you doing this podcast? You explained that at the beginning. It's the service to help others. But you get to know why you're separating and kind of why you're making these decisions. So from that, it's like setting your goal. And I know that's, like I said, I was super angsty and nervous, but what is the goal? And for me, I had a clear goal. It was, hey, I need to get back to family and have someone help support these two young teenagers. And I want them to have the same family support and education that I had that got me to where I was. And I couldn't do that,
so,
as Air Force colonel at the time.
Yeah. Do you think that, compared to maybe what you were thinking, 10 years earlier, like, hey, yeah, eventually I'm going to get out. Eventually this is going to come up, maybe I'll go to Wall Street or whatever. I remember coming out of the academy, I assume that's where everybody ends up. How did your strategy change, or what kind of strategy did you put in place to achieve that goal?
So first of all, I'll say no one cares more than you about your transition, right? And maybe your spouse, because she wants you to have a job. So my strategy was not, and I'm not shy. You guys have met me. Is don't be shy. Folks want to assist you.
Yeah.
So now's not the time to be humble. There's a lot of people just like you too, and myself, that we want to pay it forward, right? They wanted to have conversations with me. They wanted to talk about it. And so I just started that process of talking to folks. For me, it was my strategy involved a lot of narrowing the search, right? We're talking about there's opportunities here in this country and overseas. It could be DOD, it could be outside of DOD support. And I knew that I needed to narrow that search. And so the first thing for me, it was location. Did I have a specific city or region? And I wanted to come back to Memphis, Tennessee, because that's where I had the most family. That's where I knew my children would get support beyond me. And then next, I was like, well, what industry? A lot of guys leave an Air Force job and they go right back into another Air Force job, right? It's either an airline position or it's a DOD related position, Boeing, Lockheed, one of the manufacturers, something like that, or they're a DOD contractor. I didn't care about that. I was open to the world. My driving factor was location. So I think if you can adjust that, what's the driving factor? Is it location? Is it industry? Is it money? Is it whatnot? And so once I knew my kind of driving factor, which was location, then I started to think about industries, and I was open to doing everything. I was offered a job at FedEx, but I'd been out of the cockpit. And when I looked at FedEx, it was kind of my safety job, I guess. It's a great company. I know a lot of the leadership here in Memphis. They're the company in Memphis. But, you know, they have 100,000 something people working there, and they fly at night. Man, I was in AFSOC in the Air Force,
With
right?
no goggles, right?
People flying at night.
Yeah.
Right. It was not going to be a big leap of faith to go to FedEx, and they're run by lawyers, right? And military, it's a bureaucracy, right? So I was like, wow, run by lawyers, 100,000 people fly at night. Well, I'm already doing that. I mean, that's what the Air Force kind of AFSOC program was. So I said, well, this is my one chance, or going to be one of my only chances to do something different. So why take the safe thing? So I started looking for more private companies and companies that were smaller, you know, a mid-sized company, a company where I felt like, hey, I could have some ownership one day. I could be a shareholder. I could have a chance to move up. I mean, you go to FedEx, it's a wonderful company, amazing company. I'd encourage anybody to consider going there. But, you know, it's going to take you decades to move up. I mean, right? I mean, it's not show up and you're the boss at FedEx. It doesn't work like that. And it's going to take you a long, long time. And I didn't necessarily want that. Also was looking at travel too. So, you know, if I needed to be in Memphis with 2 kids, I probably didn't need to be an airline pilot gone all the time. Right. I should have just stayed in the Air Force if I did that.
Right. Right.
So that was a lot of is like narrowing the search and the target, because there are a lot of opportunities out there. And so I went down that path, and as I talked to a lot of folks, you know, they would pass me to somebody else. Like you mentioned earlier, the 50 cups of coffee. I started having the 50 cups of coffee, and I was lucky enough to have about 4 or 5 mentors, and they were in the business world here in Memphis, and they were all very selfless in that they wanted to bring talent back to Memphis. That was their goal. They knew of me from, you know, having grown up here, but they wanted to bring talent back to Memphis, and that was their goal. Whether or not I worked for their company or someone else's, a gentleman named Duncan Williams, a guy named Andy McCarroll, and a guy named Edward Dobbs were 3 of them that come to mind. But they're all businessmen in Memphis with companies around the country, but that, you know, so they wanted to pass me along. So, man, I had a lot of coffee.
How did you initially find that? Because one of the things I think Mike and I notice is the assumption is go to the bigger corporations, something that feels like big military, so I can have that equivalent leadership position. And when you're looking at a smaller firm, I think that's the bigger opportunity, especially the way the economy's going, to have more of an influence in a smaller company and make more of an impact, and be maybe a little more flexible with your options. How did you begin that networking process with that kind of focus versus waiting for a recruiter to hit you up for you know, throwing you to the big guys?
Well, initially I was kind of open for everything. So I was going down that FedEx path, and there was a big hospital group here, Methodist hospital system. And I even interviewed for the airport authority to run the airport here, be the number 2 at the airport. And I even got a call, someone asking me to be the chief of police. And I was like, are you crazy? I was an Air Force pilot. They were just, you know, hey, can we throw your name in that hat? It's kind of a political position. I was like, no, I'll decline that one.
I'm imagining the uniform right now. It would be spot on.
Well, if you know Memphis, it's a pretty tough city with crime, so I didn't really want to get it. But no, you're right. Once I kind of knew that FedEx was an option, it then allowed me kind of have that in the back of my mind as a good option, kind of a fallback in a way. And not that I've been proud to have worked there, but at that point, I was able to talk to those smaller ones. I felt comfortable doing that. The biggest problem is that a lot of the smaller groups I talked to, and some of these were really successful groups. I mean, they're not even small. You know, they're not startups, right? These were very successful companies, and then some were more startup-like. But a lot of them felt like I was overqualified, and I think your audience is going to get that. If you're a senior NCO or you're an officer, they see your performance reports because you might share those, or they see your resume, and they're looking at a different language, and it looks like you saved the world, right? When the reality is you are a decent officer, right? But
Yeah.
they see all those performance reports, they see what you did, and it's so built up that they're like, wow, we don't really have a position for a guy like you. Like, you can't take my job as CEO, right? And I was like, man, I was just kind of looking for entry level. I would just make me an offer. But there is a perception that I felt like that was a challenge, which was especially as an 05, 06 type, is that you're overqualified. And the reality is you're not. Now you can learn really quick and move up, but so I think that scares people away because they don't understand how we translate into their company. So you have to help them do that. You have to make sure you write your resume to where you are removing all that stuff. And Mike, I know you're an expert on that, right? I mean, that's,
we do espouse a lot of that. And I love your message, Trevor, this morning, because my gosh, I'm going to just sit down and let you teach every cohort that we bring through. Right. So much of what you're saying resonates with exactly that. And I think you'll get it when I say this, because I love our members. We have a passion to do this. We have a passion to help them. They're absolutely smart and intelligent and just, they can move mountains, right? But they just don't have the intel brief of the landscape that they're stepping into, right? And that's what we're helping bridge the gap, right? We're saying, hey, sit down, listen, it's not about you, it's about them. The part that's about you is what you're going to do for them. You got to deliver the message in their language, right? All of these anecdotes that we share with them. But hey, one thing real quick, Trevor, like a lot of what we do here at Blue Water is analytically driven, right? If I could just, I like to tell our members, nobody cares what Mike Wallace thinks, right? Nobody wants my opinion. It's so much more powerful when you start a sentence like this. Over the last 4 years, we've had 400 members go through the program, right? On average, it's going to take you 127 days to find your next success, right? And it's an analytical discussion, right? On average, this is where you're going to go. In fact, I was just looking at the data yesterday. 29% of our members end up in big defense. Think Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin. 31% of our members land in those government contracting firms. Those companies that are about 250 people or less, still serving the government, right? But just those government contracting firms. But here's the thing, that's math in public. What do I have left? 40%, I guess. So 40% are in the other bucket. And the other bucket is FedEx, American, Centera Medical, Adobe, Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, right? The other bucket is just, and how uncreative of us. I couldn't even figure out what else to call it, right? But we're just trying to give members an analytical assessment of, hey, where's everybody going? What are they doing, right? So that's kind of what we see. But the question I want to come back and ask you is, I'm going to ask you, what tricks of the trade and advice would you have for our members to find a good fit? Right. So hold on to that question, because I want to share an interesting analytic that I just stumbled across. We're working with a company here locally, Marathon IT Consulting. We're building our dashboard. And Scott, I just came across this, national average for individuals doing their, a big transition from one career to another. Or if you look at the demographic of military, 200, just for round numbers, let's say 200,000 people step into transition every year. Almost 50% of that grouping, Trevor, as you probably know, they step into a job and less than 10 months later, they go, no, that was horrible. I'm out, right? Because it wasn't a good fit. They, most of the time, man, I just want to grab something just so I've got it, right? Whew, man, I can rest easy. I got a job. And they choose too quickly. They choose uninformed. And so, but historically, I'm going to say over the last 3 years here at Blue Water, we don't see that. We don't see anywhere near 50% of people stepping in to a job and then stepping right back out. In fairness, I do see about a 2 to 3%, individuals stepping in there. But we attributed that to us saying, look, don't pick too quickly. This is how you assess a good fit. This is how you make sure your strategy, right, and the important things to you in life are still intact. Are what you looking at, does that preserve these things, right? And we walk our members through that. Here's the disturbing analytic, and then I'm going to stop talking. Over the last 12 months, I've seen, no kidding, I can see the data spike. We've probably doubled that number, right, over the last 12 months. We've had individuals stepping into jobs and stepping right back out and pursuing something else. That's 5-6%. And so I was talking with Steve Weeman and some of my partners yesterday. I'm going, why is that, man? Like, I can see the data, I can see the shift, I can see the move. I'm not sure, Trevor, why I'm seeing that metric drive that way. So I guess my question for you is, how did you assess a good fit, right? You're looking at the industries.
Absolutely.
How did you assess a good fit?
So before I give that answer, what I'll tell you, let's make sure we talk about this later or offline. Adams Keegan, we're a national HR payroll benefits firm. We also have a recruiting services arm where we're filling jobs for employers, right? So putting people like me into jobs. So we're going out and finding people like headhunters. And those trends of what you're seeing, I think are also tied to macroeconomic trends, right? Post-COVID hiring, now that's starting to taper off. There's a lot of those dynamics that come in there. Also, I think employers are smarter about hiring than 10 years ago. They're doing personality testing. They're doing a lot more things to see if you're really a match for them as well. So with that, now to answer your question is, it's like a date. You go on the first date just to see if the girl's pretty or the boy's pretty or whatever, depending on the audience. And in the second date, it's like, okay, she was pretty. Now I want to see if I like her. And then the next date is, do we have interests? And so you do have to date and learn about them. And what I learned in my dating with Adams Keegan, and the way Jay Keegan, our president and CEO, did it was, he knew I was likely to move into the senior level at some point. So he hired me using some of his senior board members. 2 of his senior board members, or 3 of his senior folks, happened to be veterans. So we're predominantly veteran owned because Mr. Jim Keegan's a 1955 West Point grad. I did not know that when I agreed to interview with him, but it became evident that they had some serious core values that align with mine. Mr. John Thompson, also on the board, was a 1960-something West Point grad. And then we had a command chief that was running one of our companies from the Navy. And so it was very evident that culturally, the most important thing to the guys that were interviewing me was integrity, in terms of they were going to run a company with integrity. And that's a rarity. I mean, profit's important. Winning is critically important. And I'm in a sales business development role. Winning is critical, but you have to do it in a way that you can win, sustain for a long time. And if you don't have the core values, integrity, being able to work with others and provide a product that's value added, you're not going to win. So I sense that over other places I interviewed, those big, huge companies, like I'll tell you, Amazon will hire everybody, right? If you're a good officer, Amazon will come grab you, give you a bonus. That's probably like everybody's safety pick these days. And then everybody I hear is somewhat disenfranchised after a while and leaves Amazon. Not everybody, but it's just
it's a high turnover. It's 35-40% a year. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you probably know the stats. I just know some of my senior officer buddies that have been there, and I'm sure some will grind it out and be great members of Amazon, but that's not what I was being pitched with this company. I was being pitched an opportunity to have my hand held a little bit, because one of the questions I asked is, what do you do? Right? They asked. An interview was set up with the mutual friend, and I said, well, I don't really know what y'all do, and they said, don't worry about that. We know who you are. We know your experiences. We'll teach you what we do. We're just looking for people that have the right values. And
so immediately you knew it started to feel like a good fit. And
it did.
Just a hard skill or a soft skill. It was a cultural alignment. It was an environment alignment to where you go, man, I believe I could go on old term, right? Deployment with these guys. I could go on I could live with these guys. Yeah, we're culturally aligned. And I love the way you said that, because so many companies, like, I can't teach you honor, courage, commitment. I can't teach you, ownership and those kind of things. Those are hard things to teach. I can sit down and teach you how to read this P&L sheet. I can sit down and teach you how to track these metrics. But culturally, I love the way that you explained that. And that Adams Keegan sounds like a great company, right? They're looking for that cultural fit. So.
Absolutely. So Mike, I hijacked that same approach, and that's how I ended up with the Naval Academy guy that's working with me out of Dallas, Joe Ruzicka. That's how I grabbed my guy out of Nashville, who I grew up with and knew he had those, Brian Evans. And I hired Ty Reedy from West Point. Got him he's an Army guy. But I've just started to look for those type of folks first, and then figure out, where do I go from there with them, give them the personality tests. I love the DISC test because it tells me, do they have the traits I'm looking for? The one time I hired somebody that the DISC test said they probably aren't going to be a good fit for what I needed them for, but they were I think they were Academy grad, or at least an Air Force grad, retiree. They seemed to have all the right things in the interviews. It just didn't work out, right? I should have listened to the DISC test.
Isn't that amazing? That's an interesting data point. Yeah.
I thought I was smarter than the DISC test. I am not smarter than the But that's a good one to use. I tell people don't do any strategic hires at all unless you're willing to spend $25, $50 and have them surveyed and do it. I mean, it's just a tiny investment and a big decision.
No, that's a huge takeaway for the listeners that are out there who may be stepping into their own transition, or as we like to say, career progression, right? Fit is important. And I like to tell our members this, Trevor, they may not be the experts yet at the environment, the culture of the new world that they're stepping into and pursuing. They will be eventually, but maybe not yet. And so what I tell them and reinforce them is, I said, listen, you guys and gals, don't skip these steps. Have design thinking. I want you to spend some time introspectively looking at what is important to you in life. Like you already articulated. Hey, it was area to me, right? That was important. So for the members out there, I would say, what is important? Know what those big rocks are that you're not willing to move on, right? Like, hey, this is important to me. And then make sure that whatever it is you're pursuing, preserve those big rocks for you. That's alignment, we think, and that's a good fit, because the one thing I tell them, and I know this for sure, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, if they step in and it is not a good fit, they are not fulfilled at getting out of bed in the morning to walk into that environment, I don't care how much compensation you're being provided, you will not stay.
Right? You're absolutely right. And I actually want to go down a couple of rabbit holes with that and talk from the employer side. Okay. We've got a couple hundred folks. I'm always looking for my next hire. Had a great guy at the West Point event that just kind of come up, shake my hand. I'm like, wow, this guy just made a short list. I mean, I can sense them. But one thing that I'm about to tell one of my secrets here, so I hope you don't have that many listeners. But one thing that I do, besides the personality test and besides the different interviews with senior leaders in our group, when I'm thinking about making a hire, is I make them go to dinner with my wife and I, right?
I love it. I love it.
I have found that having my wife's opinion, and I got lucky, talked about my first wife passing. I hit the lottery twice, got remarried, added a stepson who's 15, and had a late life kid. I've got a 7-year-old now who was born on Christmas. So I've got a Christmas baby 7-year-old. But my current wife is in sales. She's a realtor, and she's very discerning. And so I had them come to dinner with me, and I'll tell you, our CEO, Jay Keegan, he'll be at my office the next morning. What did your wife think? Because she knows that she can ferret out those things at my blind. Because I'm thinking about, man, I really want to hire this guy.
Yeah.
He's a combat hero. He went to West Point. He did this. He did that. I'm seeing all these great things, and she's like, man,
I love it.
Yeah, that you left the table and he looked at his phone the whole time and didn't even talk to me. Like, he doesn't really care about what's going on around him. He was just focused on, just these. She'll point out nuances that are tells. So, because I wasn't looking to hire someone that is just going to be working. I mean, I'm going to go travel with them, right? We're gonna. I hope to make a lot of my hires shareholders one day. Is this a future shareholder? Are they that type of person? So, yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's just, you're always being interviewed too, right? I mean, they're looking at your social media, right? They're looking at your Facebook, your LinkedIn. LinkedIn kind of drives me crazy these days because as a C-level, I just get hit up on LinkedIn, right? People try to sell me. But your interview's going on all the time, and that matters, whether it's the dinner on your trip to go interview with them or them looking at your social media or whatnot. So, and I'm going to back up even farther and tell you kind of a random story. Dig into that culture. I'll tell you, our culture here is really strong. Our founder, Bob Adams, who founded the company 37 years ago, he doesn't run the company in any manner. It's run by Jay Keegan. He's a wonderful president, CEO. But Bob Adams is still active in the company, and he's probably in his early 60s. And Bob purely sells. He sells our hotel vertical. So we do HR, payroll, and benefits for hotels. About 50,000 hotels or 50,000 hotel employees around the country, and Bob handles the sales of those, the business development of that, and he's really good at it. So Bob works on the sales team, which means Bob works theoretically for me. And he founded the company, and his name is on the door, and it starts with Adams, and that's him. And his son is our COO. But Bob will email me or text me or call me and say, hey, Trevor, I'm thinking of taking vacation. I'm going to go out in the boat today. Is that okay? Right.
Wow.
I mean, obviously, I've never said no. Right, because I give him the respect that he's founded the company, but he's a team player, right?
Yeah,
he's going to ask the chief revenue officer, can I take off because I need to have some downtime or whatever. That's great special culture. Yeah.
God, that sounds just awesome. Sounds fantastic, right?
So with that, I would encourage folks, as we're talking a lot about culture, is try to figure out what questions you can ask to learn about their culture. Do they support nonprofits? Do they give time off for this or that? I mean, what benefits are they offering? In our world, I'm a licensed agent for all sorts of insurances, and we have 2 brokerages and as part of our services. But you can see what a company's like by what they're offering. Are they offering a retirement? What is the match? Are they offering a medical? Do they match for the family? Do they offer dental vision? Do they offer these other things? That package of benefits these days, because we've got, Mike, you probably know this better, like 5 generations or 4 generations of people in the workforce, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have the spectrum of benefits offerings that are going to attract a variety of people. Some people have these days, what motivates them benefits wise can really be, is it telecommuting, or is it
is a different answer for each demographic that's out there. And so being somewhat knowledgeable onto who you're plugging in with, or as a person in your career progression, what you're pursuing and who is the lion's share of the individuals that are going there, right? It's just, it's kind of, it's a valid call out, right? 5 generations in the workforce, not all the same strings motivate everybody the same way, right?
And Mike, I'll tell you, one of the big hurdles, and every once in a while, our vice president of HR will come down and knock on my door, and she comes in, and remember, we're an HR payroll company, right? Yeah. She comes down, and I always like to joke with her. I was like, I sell HR. I'm not HR, right? Personally. And she comes in and is like, oh, what did I do now? Right. Coming down and let me know that, hey, we had a misstep on the sales team, because sales guys are not HR. I mean, they're focused on winning deals and getting new business, and they're out traveling and doing stuff. And they are not the best HR folks. So I had to learn that, in my company, there was almost nobody that had been in the military, right?
Yeah.
So my self-motivation to just go out and win and work late and do this and that wasn't where they were coming from. I mean, they were doing their 8 to 5 job and they loved it. And so folks have to be motivated for a variety of reasons. Fortunately, when you get military folks, sometimes they're over motivated, and that's great. But if you take an over motivated person and drop them into a group of individuals that are just kind of the regular workforce, not that they're bad or anything, they haven't lived that military kind of mission mindset where you gotta take the hill every single day, right? Those things start to clash, right, Mike? I mean,
they do.
It's like oil and water. So you got to learn to throttle back a little bit and slow down and not expect everybody's kind of got your same mission mindset. Doesn't make them bad. They're huge performers still. They just have a different way of doing things.
Well, it's interesting. We spend time talking to our members, and we do. The great thing about Blue Water is, Trevor, this isn't just a transactional relationship with our membership base. They become part of the network. They're a responsive part of the network as we grow. There's no doubt in my former military mind, I could send an email out with 400 individual addresses on it. I would get probably 80% response today, right? Because we have that kind of relationship, right? So, but your point is absolutely, valid. It's like when you step into the environment, you gotta, it's like that book, onboarding the first 90 days. Hey, it's probably a good idea just to kind of do a lot of listening and watching, right? And stepping into that environment and say, hey, this is me and this is how we did it. And it's probably not going to go well, right? But what we do tell them is don't lose that. You've got to temper it. And most individuals that they work with are not likely to be interested in them or their background. Some doesn't make them bad Americans. They might not even understand what you did before you got there. It's not going to be important to them until you deliver a result that impacts them in their environment, in their language, and their world. You've changed something for the good for them. And now the question goes, hey, Trevor, that was amazing. Tell me again, what did you do before you got here? That's typically where the conversation,
you're
7 or 8 months, right? You never know, but yeah.
You're completely nailing it. What I'll tell my guys, and I learned this from a buddy of mine, Chris Bradish. He works in DC for Crosby Texter. They're a big international kind of law group, government group. And he always says, you got to get 1 to get 2. Get 2, then get 3. Because you come in and like in the sales world, you've got these big ideas on how you're going to win all these deals. And I'm like, whoa, let's pump the brakes. Let's get 1, and then we'll get 2, and then we'll get 3. And the same thing with change. I'm telling them, let's get a win first. Just a little win. So when you go into work in that new environment, or you're going into sales or whatever you're doing where there's change, you got to get a quick early win, and then people start to build confidence, and then you can get another win, and then eventually you get to that final goal, which is much harder to get to, whether you're changing your organization or you're just trying to get to a revenue goal. But man, you got to take baby steps at first.
Love it.
Well, hey guys, we're coming up on 45 minutes. So just want to check in on everybody's time, because Trevor, you're talking about sales, and I think that's a missed opportunity. A lot of retirees think sales is a bad word, and there's all sorts of different types of sales. Can you tell us a little bit about what does the chief revenue officer do, and anything you want to showcase about Adams Keegan right now? Who are you looking to connect with?
So first of all, I'll tell folks, do not be scared of sales. Okay. Yeah. I never thought I was going to run a sales team. Okay. And as chief revenue officer, my job is to create revenue streams for Adams Keegan and drive our profitability with more revenue. Okay. I don't deliver the service personally, but it's my job to bring in more clients and run and build a team that does that. And I don't keep clients anymore. I mean, my team does that. They're out doing the drip marketing and meeting with people and consultation. But that's what I do. And having multiple revenue streams, we don't just sell widgets. We sell HR, payroll, benefits, 401k, property and casualty. It's all the things an employer needs to run their company effectively. And we compete with the ADPs, the Paycoms, Paychecks, Pay Your Mama, whoever, right? But we do that with people, okay, and technology. We're not a software as a service solution. We own our technology, but we bring people attached to your team. So a company from a startup all the way up to several thousand employees, large hotel groups with 30 locations or senior care, or a nonprofit like Special Ops Warrior Foundation, one of my great clients, so they can focus on their missions at hand, whether it's making money or a nonprofit mission or whatever. But that's what we do at Adams Keegan. So I like to talk to anybody that's a decision maker on the payroll, HR, benefit side that is looking to either grow their company or make their company more efficient. And if I can't help you grow it on the backside and save money and make it better or be more efficient, then we're not a match and we move on. And my take is we bring on about 100 clients a year. Okay. I'm not looking to be ADP and bring in thousands and lose thousands every year. We like to bring them in, keep them for the very long term. We have a over 95% retention rate over a 5-year period. And so we like to build a long partnership with that company. And that's critical because these days we're a private company. I'm a shareholder. A lot of my key sales folks are shareholders. We're in the retention business, because it's a lot harder to make a client than it is to keep a client. So if you can keep a client for the long time and they're happy, they'll create clients for you. So with that, all the way back around to how you started that, Scott, which I love it, is people shouldn't be afraid of sales. What they should be afraid of is selling the wrong product. Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of, I always thought of sales jobs as being a little bit slimy or whatever. It's like, oh, I'm going to be, well, if you've got a good value add product and it's going to be something good, like there were a lot of great West Point and the Global Summit, a lot of good pitches by entrepreneurs there. They had a good product that they wanted to bring to the market. And so what I would tell you is, if you are interested in making money for your family and doing well, sales typically is the best opportunity for the high side on making money. Is think about what you're selling. Is it a product that you're proud of and that you think will make people's lives better? If it's not, you probably want to move on. It's back to the culture thing. And so I feel like we've got a product that will align every year with 100, 150 businesses, and we'll make them better. And that's a good fit. Just like what you're doing, Mike. I mean, you're trying to make people's lives better, people's families better by helping them, into the right position post-military.
But it's like what you said, though, Trevor, it's not transactional in nature, right? We envision what we're doing just the way you described your approach. This is enduring, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want you to come through the door and see the benefit of what you're doing, but then I want you to continue to be a part of it as we go forward. This is your professional network, just like you explain it, right? They're enduring relationships. It's hard to get them through the door, but once you get them through the door, man, I want you to be part of the family. We're here together, right?
And Mike, I'll tell you, I'll go back to my win comment. To me, it's about a win-win-win. I want to win. I want my salesmen to win. I want to make money because that's what we do. That's why we're in business, to support our families. But I want my client to feel like they're winning, that this has made them better. And then I've got to make, I've got an obligation to the company, the shareholders, the employees. Did I bring in a bad client? And I do it once a year. I bring in a stinker because I'm just thinking, man, I need to get that sell. And I regret it. And I go back to the entire company, basically. And I'll send out an email or stand in front of them and say, I apologize.
That's my bad. My bad.
My bad. I'll learn. After 10 years, I've not learned, but I promise. But I even tell my sales guys, my young sales guys, I was like, you got to have a real dumpster fire and learn from it. But so it's that idea of like, it needs to be good for me, it needs to be good for the client, and it needs to be good for the company. You got to have a win-win-win type mentality when it comes to sales. If not, the relationship's going to be short. People are going to be mad. You're not going to get more clients in the future. So that's just, a little.
Yeah.
Love it.
And And I think I think the moral of the story here today is cultural fit and with sales, having sales skills. Like when you're coming out of the military, you got to sell yourself anyways.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you might as well be open to that idea of sales to the right fit, whether you're
Here's a
the client.
newsflash: transition is sales.
Yeah.
You're the product, right? You're the product. You're trying to get it out. Yeah.
Cool.
And I'll tell you, there's a lot of leadership opportunity in the sales world as you move up, and your skills as a military officer, NCO, running a sales team, or running that side of a company, they really translate too. So I mean, the goal might not be just sales; it might be to grow up and run a bigger team that happens to be selling or providing consultative services or whatever they do.
Yeah. Well, Trevor, thank you so much for giving us your time. You have dropped, I mean, your story is very powerful. Congratulations on your success and finding the right fit and doing it the right way and being a good example for those and for sharing that with our audience. I think a lot of people are going to glean from that. I'm on Ty Reedy's email list, so I get his emails. I recommend people sign up for your email list and get those because you guys do webinars periodically, right?
Yeah.
Go sit on those webinars.
Webinars are great, and we keep all those recordings on there. And there's some big changes in the Secure 2.0, big retirement changes coming up. There's changes on the wage, the FLSA, the kind of the wage limits, whether you're exempt or non-exempt. But we like to push those out once a month, and we've got a great team that does those. They don't let me on there. I might say something HR inappropriate as a former military guy. But not just kidding. But yeah, tell folks, www.adamskeegan.com.
I'll bring up the website again.
There's only one Adams Keegan out there that's doing HR payroll. So come see us. I'm always happy to like Mike is, right, to share and talk to folks transitioning. I think I do it about once a week, it seems like. And I've even got all the Service Academy nominations coming up for our 2 local congressmen in the next couple of weeks. So I'm trying to put people in the service and trying to help them when they're coming out, I guess. I'm always happy.
Well, it's absolutely noble. So thank you for making the time again. And I know we said it up front, but we just want to say it again. It was great making a connection with you up in DC the other week. Thank you so much for your generous offer of dinner. Scott and I enjoyed you guys' company.
Yeah, it's
just been a pleasure making your acquaintance. Listen, I just want to end on this note, Trevor. We here at Blue Water, we're a niche pipeline, but I will tell you, with 400 individuals in the network, we can see that in the windscreen. We're starting to become kind of powerful, right, for individuals that are looking for those purple unicorns, right? I mean, we've got them, right, and. So, if there's any way that we can help you guys, please reach out, right? Like you said, I want to make this a win-win-win, right? I mean, I'm a big believer in relationships are great and they start out great, but if there's not benefit in it for everybody that's there, the clock kind of, unwinds a little bit until it's just, not beneficial for everybody. So I love your culture. I love the way you describe it. There's no doubt we're very like-minded culture-wise, right? It's nothing about what we do is transactional. It's all enduring, and we're passionate about it. So I just thank you for making the time. It's just been a pleasure plugging in with you, and I'm really impressed with the company, yourself, and all the goodness that you guys are doing. And I love that you brought on Joe, right? I mean, I love Logan Joe Rizicki as well too. I've known him for years. Wonderful individual. I'd be remiss if I didn't give him a shout out. But a wonderful individual, and we just look forward to staying in touch with you guys.
All right, Mike. Well, let's stay connected. I want to have you work closer too with our Adams Keegan recruiting services, our recruiting services arm. Kristen Lockhart over there runs that, and she just works down the hall for me. But I think that's where there's a really good natural fit, as we're trying to help employers find people, and you're trying to help people find employers. That's a good dating service. We kind of have a synergy there, and I think
a lot of swiping right or left or whatever direction you swipe.
Maybe I'll create the app.
That's right. Well, Scott, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. And I'll tell you, we have made a 5-year commitment to continue doing the West Point entrepreneur events. I mean,
amazing.
Thank you.
I've never committed to anything for more than 2 years that I sponsored, and we tripled down, doubled down, 5 times down, and said, we'll do it with for 5 years. That's how strong we believe about Service Academy, and not just Service Academy, but military officers and NCOs networking and using those networks to find those wins. Well, y'all have a good day. I appreciate it.
Congratulations.
All right, brother.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Cool. Mike, you hanging out
Sure.
for a sec? We can wrap it up. There he goes. Whoops. Oh, you just got to close the window.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thanks, Trevor. Got it.
What a
Cool.
wonderful
Wow.
session.
Wow.
I think you're
Awesome,
still
man. That was
live?
huh?
Still live?
Yeah, we're still live, but I can wrap it up right now. No, I just wanted to say, thanks again to Trevor.
Person. Yeah.
That was a powerful
I
story.
loved his message, Scott, right? And again, for the members that are out there listening, or individuals that are stepping in to their own transition or career progression, right? What a great session. 45 minutes. Go back and listen to this, right? We spent a lot of time putting together analytical support information, insights from other individuals that have gone before. But like, we just brought Trevor in. He echoed every single thing, Scott, that we put out. What better endorsement do you need on, hey, this is how you do it? Remember, it's not just a list of what you need to do in your career progression or transition. This is how you do it and why. Wow, I just thought it was really powerful. So it was amazing, right? Absolutely amazing.
No, very grateful we ran into him to share that story.
Yeah.
But all right, man. Well, I'm gonna regroup from whatever happened last night, and
election day behind us, right? And we won't turn it into a political escapade here, but suffice to say, I think we'll all be happy that our cell phones won't be blowing up anymore with those text messages just nonstop, right? It's kind of, let's just shut all that down and kind of get back to focused on what's important to us in our lives, right? And
what you can control.
Yeah, exactly.
Finding your own fit. So
love it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mike.
You bet.
Awesome conversation, and we will see everybody next week.
You bet. Cheers.
Take care.